bothered about the honor of his party.
Correct.
Honor of his commanding officer, honor of his company commander, honor of his battalion commander. So that is what propels him to achieve this task.
Correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to add this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Could I add on a couple of points?
Oh, so sure, sir. We couldn't see you. We couldn't see you on the screen. Sorry.
Okay. Very well covered by Major Rakesh Sharma and General Kochhar as always. What I want to add is, we live by the Czech-Woodian model, where it says, the safety, honor, and welfare of my country comes first, always, and every time.
Right.
And it ends for the leader. Second line says, the safety, welfare, and honor of your men comes next, and your own safety, welfare comes last, always, and every time. This was the Indian Military Academy motto, or the credo, which was given in 1932 on its founding by Field Marshal Czech. Now, that is one thing. Now, Indian Army, our Pulton, our unit system, is the bedrock of promoting this high degree of motivation, high degree of mission accomplishment, because we got a very proud history. Rakesh has said that old history, 300, 400 years back, that is what the units inherit, particularly the infantry units. They inherit that. And Rakesh, just as a small correction, and pardon me for doing so, is that the Battle of Saragari was 12 September 1897. So 125th year is now round the corner next month. So that is it, exactly 30 days from now. Indian Army promotes the individual, the unit, and mission cohesion because of its very close-knit way of life. Our training, our operational training, our looking after the welfare of our men. It starts from officers, it goes down not only to the men. When we are in peace stations or in operational areas, we attend to the needs of their wives, their families, and the children. We are their father figure. A commanding officer is known as the old man. He may be only 35 to 40 years old. Now, that is what it does. It is Naam, Namak, Nishan, yes, but it is also the Czech-Woodian model, which has taken us forward. And, that is what happened in Kargil. It's just a classic example. Rakesh is a living example in this audience. So they did it. And let me tell you, what sort of situation exists there. When they went up to the peaks, you got the dry ration. There'll be a puri, which is there with them. You go in the evening, wherever you're in the morning, it is like stone. You have to break it. And just imagine if it's something like stone, how hard it is to bite. That is it. Your fingers will not go on the trigger because of the extreme cold. And that is the way. And I will give one example. When I was a brigade major in Kargil, my general officer commanding, he also had the section brigade under him. So I happened to have a very good rapport with him as a very young major. One day I asked him, the general officer commanding in Kargil, he was there. I said, sir, what is the most difficult thing which you find in your job accomplishment? He looked this way, that way. And then he said, the day I visit Sachin Glacier, when I come back in the night, I don't sleep. You know why? Because our men, they are sleeping on the snow. I'm talking of 1987. Correct. Today is 2022, things have improved. This is a general officer commanding who said, I don't sleep that night because our men, they are absolutely super. They are superhuman beings. So that much for my indulgence.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you putting the right perspective of the Chatwin.
Yeah. We have to say he's a super old man. He's proven his mettle and he's proven the fact that he's a super old man. General Singh, this is truly amazing. The concern that you have for your army and all these little anecdotes which have stayed with you have truly made this session a memorable one. Now, Jessica, over to you and for your next question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your such a inspiring stories. So my next question is from Major General Singh. That as you have said that 25% of Agniveers will be retained and the 75 would be shed off. So is Agnipat scheme is only about the 25%, and if yes, then what about those 75% of Agniveers? Where will they go after 4 years?
Okay, I think it's a very good question.
Thank you.
Firstly, I will talk about the 25%.
Yes, sir.
General Kochhar has covered a certain system of assessment which will come about, which I'm not aware of, because with very senior officers, when I have had an indulgence just less than a month back, it was that they're trying to establish a system at the unit level, which will be computerized, data-based, and the person will be constantly assessed in the unit. And of course, it has to start at the lowest level of command, that is his detachment commander and upwards. So that much. Now 25% who have to be retained. My own stand is that the Indian Army, our unit commanders, the commanding officers, whom I refer to as the old man, he will do a super job. He'll make a diamond out of them. He will train them so well that they'll be diamonds as good as any. Because after 4 years of this Agniveer training or service, he gets retained in the unit and he starts as a first termer or the new person only from the point of view of pensionary benefits. In real terms, he is in 5th year of service. Now, I will also cover on this 25% since the recruitment, the training is only for 6 months. How do we further train these young boys who come? So it has to be on the job training. But there are certain arms like our artillery, their engineers, signals, the technical arms, EME, who require a longer training. Specifically, engineers, the signals, the EME training goes for as long as 18 months. Air Force Navy trains people for 2 to 3 years in the recruitment part of it itself. So how do we do it? So one option which is emerging is that they will go back to their training centers. This is one of the options which is being analyzed, and they will go on courses and they'll be trained further. In these 4 years, where they're with the unit, or 3.5 years, their aptitude would be established for specific trades, and that will be taken forward. This is one of the options I'm expressing, because it's a very it's in a very nascent stage and things are going to materialize. Now about the 75%. First of all, I must tell you that as citizens of the country, we are all citizens of the country first. I wear uniform next. And you are soldiers in your own field. So we owe it to this balanced 75%, how best we have trained them, how best they can be absorbed in the civil life. And I did mention there is still a clarification, at least to me, whether they will be able to obtain the skills while in service. If they have to do that, then it's going to be a cost to the unit establishment, because that man has to be available to you. But after that, they will go in certain universities online. They will get opportunity to train, and they will get certificates, maybe in diploma. Certain technical people, they'll get their certificates or degrees or diplomas. The point is, yes, those are not going to get retained. Let me say, those who are in the aviation corps or the corps of EME, signals and engineers, they are a technical hand. So their absorbability is little better than what it is of an infantryman or an artilleryman or the one who's in the armored or the tank regiments. So there is a difference. Even General Kochhar is here. The ordnance boy, he gets trained. He gets trained in the depot. He becomes a skilled storekeeper in higher levels. His management skill is in that department. But it's a question. In the briefing, I was fortunate, there was a briefing held in the Army headquarters on 14 June afternoon. And I must state here, the Army chief was on record to say that the Prime Minister has taken upon himself rehabilitation of 75% is very dear to his heart. It's a very high priority. And we all owe it to each other. Just look at it. Certain industry, they said we'll absorb them. The paramilitary forces, they say we'll absorb them. The Coastal Guard will absorb them. Let me tell you that 10% reservation is in existence since at least 35 to 40 years. But these organizations have not absorbed them. Today, industry says we'll absorb them. Why are not they absorbing the current lot or the previous current lot which has gone on pension? Why they do not absorb them? They have not. So I feel the industry, the corporate sector, they need a diktat from the government. These Agniveers, you have a moral, social responsibility. It is nation building which they owe to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for expressing your views. I want Major General Rajan Kochhar, sir, to add something to this if he wants to add.
You see, I am entirely in agreement with General SPP has just said. The proof of the pudding lies in its eating. And past experience suggests that even those vacancies have not been given to the ex-servicemen. And even Kargil widows, I have many such friends who were promised petrol pumps and land and jobs, but they haven't been given. But the problem is that, you see, our mechanism is different. It's the center, it's the state. Center may say something, state may not do it. If the political party is the same in the center and state, it may still happen. But if it is not there, then it won't happen. So they are, for many things, people are promising a lot. And these promises can only materialize after 4 years, and the elections are after 2 years. So everybody speaks on a certain agenda. So I would say that let us see what happens after 4 years. Whatever government will come into play, we don't know. And if it is a different government, then this commitment has no meaning, because this government is only up to 2024. So how can they make a statement which is going to happen in 2026? Because they don't know who's going to come to power. Whatever we may actually assume right now, that it's only the BJP which is going to come, but we don't know what is going to happen after 2 years. So it's too premature for any government to make a commitment today. What I want is a legislation which should be passed by both members of the House. It should be transformed into a bill. And once this legislation is there, then it doesn't matter which government comes. So if this government, if the intent is good, if they mean what they are saying, I would want this bill to be passed in Parliament. And each state government held accountable in case they don't honor the bill, then the Supreme Court has to intervene later on in case of a litigation. So, my appeal is that let's convert these promises into a legal framework. And if that happens, I would be the most convinced person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Major Rakesh Sharma. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. Ma'am, Major Rakesh Sharma, your views.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. So, in fact, I concur with my both seniors out here that I'm very, very convinced personally, and our past and present stands testimony to the fact that most of these 75% of so-called Agniveers, they'll become street fighters. They have to fend for themselves. And I'll give you a logic for it, and I'll also give reasoning for it. The fact is that if the intent was there, or if the intent was real, then when the scheme was launched, then government, the way the scheme has been propagated and organized, they were needed just to add as to, similarly in writing, they were supposed to be adding as to how do they intend and how they are going to provide re-employment or employment avenues to the people who are not able to make it. They didn't do that. There are tall promises. There are so-called unfounded sweeping statements which are being made in the media by various ministers, politicians. The fact is that this is not going to be implemented the way it is being talked about. And as sir brought out, that there's a 10% quota even now, but that is not being fulfilled. That the people are not being taken even when the quota exists. Even when you have it on the platter, you are not doing it. How are you expected to do it for so many lakhs of people who would come out regularly out of the forces, and where would you employ them? You can't force the corporate world and the industries to you can't impose a dictate on them. You can't do that unless you pass an act towards that. Even after passing act, people in our country know how to bypass these acts and rules and regulations. It's not easy to implement all these acts. We all know that there are so many acts which are there coming out of a parliament through constitution, but they are not effective. They can't be imposed. They can't be implemented. So forget about corporate industry. Even if suppose some enactment happened implementing it. So I'm very sorry to say that people at that age bracket, when you are neither here nor there, you're 27, 30 years of age, you'll be languished in the streets to fend for yourself. And the kind of employment state we have in our country, we know that it is going to be a big struggle for them. Let's not have any doubts about it. I'm very, very clear about it. Thank you so much.
All three of you. Yes.
Yes.
Sir, we have just one more minute, and each one of you has spoken very effectively, but we'll close with your closing statement.
Okay, I'll take on, allow me to say, carrying forward to what I have spoken earlier, and General Kochhar and Major Rakesh Sharma said, my recommendation is that there should be a common recruitment policy existing, not only for the armed forces, it should include the paramilitary forces, the central armed police forces, the coastal guards, all such. And in that, the merit list wise, you identify that they come into the military and likewise. Now, these Agniveers, 75%, is the best bet for them to be absorbed in these paramilitary forces and the central armed police forces. What happens is that they can go up to 58 years there, and they have got the NPS system which is there. But for that, we have to overcome turf wars. We have to look as nationalists and accept this. And then this youth, which has been trained for 4 years at a very high tempo in discipline, in combat arm, in management, he is an asset till 58 years of age. So this is my parting shot. And there are a lot of other points to say, but thank you very much. His commander who's 50 years old and so what happened, we crawled and that we had to visit that post. So the decision taken by the commander was that we will go to the post, but instead of going to the next post in a helicopter, we went up the mountain. And all these areas then became later Tiger Hill. So what I'm saying, there was an exposure to us, but it was a moment of courage because the men were waiting. The brigade commander, the battalion commander, they took a decision. I was a staff officer, we accompanied. But this, this self of leadership of the brigade commander, I speak about it, that we don't back out. And that is where the Indian Army, has done so well. I happened to be in Kargil in 87, 89. And, I just lived those moments, particularly when the 99 Kargil war was taking place. I was just having a sense of great empathy because sort of difficulties which are there and what heroism was shown there. I think I live by those experiences better than my own.
Truly, you are a brave heart. I mean, imagine being army, surviving it all, and not giving up. A normal man, a normal mortal, somehow give in, buckle down. But you people hold on. So it's truly, truly creditable. And with this lovely anecdote, I think, Jessica, nothing could be a better start. Please commence. So here goes. Over to Jessica. Jessica, you're not audible. Change your
Hello,
settings.
am I audible?
Yes, Jessica.
Can I start now?
Absolutely.
On the celebration of 75th Independence Day of India, Rustle of Book Club organized an Independence Day
Bit
discussion
louder.
panel on an army recruiting program for Indian citizens.
Increase
That
your
is
volume.
Agnipat scheme. To
Increase
start the
your volume.
celebration,
Speak louder. Louder.
I'm really sorry.
Your
Am I
recording.
clear now?
Yes. You just need to increase your volume. Your recording needs to be clear. Otherwise, it will not be clear.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead.
much better.
Go ahead, please.
I'm really sorry for this inconvenience. Really sorry. So, on the celebration of 75th Independence Day of India, Rustle of Book Club organized an Independence Day discussion panel on an army recruiting program for Indian citizens, that is Agnipat scheme. We start this celebration with the composition in Hindi, since it gives us tremendous joy to honor our national language. जिसका ताज हिमालय है, जहां बहती गंगा है, जहां अनेकता में एकता है, सत्यमेव जयते जहां का नारा है, जहां मजहब भाईचारा है, वो भारत वतन हमारा है, वो भारत वतन हमारा है. To delight our audience and give us a meaningful insight, we have VSM Major General SVP Singh, Shaurya Chakra Major Rakesh Sharma, and Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar with us. On behalf of Rustle of Book Club, I would like to express my admiration to every one of these key figures, as well as to every member of military services who defend us and stand up for us. It gives me a great joy to have such a well-known personalities like you. As we all know that this discussion is about the Agnipat scheme. So my first question to all of you is, what is Agnipat scheme and what are the benefits of this scheme? We can start with Major General SVP Singh.
Okay. Now, this Agnipath scheme which has come about, the government has taken a decision. Before that, I want to say that when any organizational changes are required, there are certain factors which have to be taken into account. And the foremost is doctrinal and strategical changes which come about in warfare, which lead to such changes. And there the answer is affirmative. Changes have come about. Second is technological advancements which take place in warfare, in the equipment which we have, and the manpower which is going to operate that high-end technology which gets inducted. And again, the answer is yes. Third is the felt need of the user. The user in this case is the Indian Armed Forces, the military. Did they require a change in this system? The answer here is not an affirmative. However, when such decisions of the government are imposed, I would not like to do any post-mortem, but I would like to reflect that in the life of our nation, there are certain decisions which are taken and which we have to live with it, but the nation and the government has to learn its lessons. And the Agnipath scheme is a classical example. Did we learn our lessons from the just gone past Farm Bill or the Citizens Amendment Act, which still does not stand notified? For this scheme to be introduced, of great import was a consultative committee of the Parliament appointed? Was the Parliament referred to? Was a white paper issued? The answer again is not an affirmative. I personally feel the Agnipath scheme which has come in now I'll tell you that it is again the recruiting age is almost the similar from 17.5 to 21 years. It varies for certain technical trades and the clerical staff, but that is the general scheme. Secondly, it affords service for 4 years to the Agniveers. And here, the major change which has come about is that 25% of these Agniveers will be retained and 75% would be shed off. They'll be again, what you can say, debussed from the military. They have to find a new course of career in their lives. Now, how is this going to be done? The 25% is going to be a merit-based selection. This merit-based selection remains a challenge, will be a challenge. How do you carry out an assessment system of these youngsters? And for that, the army, the military has taken it head on. They are deriving methods to do it. Now, they are going to be paid 20,000 rupees a month. And in the 4th year, they'll be heading at 40,000 rupees a month. So they'll have a take home of about 6.92 lakhs at the end of the 4 years of their salary, out of which 30% is going to be plowed by them and also equal amount by the government. So those who are going to be shed off, they're going to get an approximate amount of about rupees 11.71 lakhs, say 12 lakhs. This is a golden handshake for them. Now, what is the entry of these people? It is class 10, but in certain technical trades, it is class 12 entry with PCM, that is physics, chemistry, maths as the subjects. And also the clerical staff is class 12. The general duties are the one which is class 10. Now, when we have such entry, I'm just sharing, those who have to go out, they have to acquire certain greater skills or more skills specific to what they become suitable later on in life. And for that, the government has catered, as stated, that they will provide them some diploma courses. But what is not clarified, at what stage they will be provided such courses. Will it be army or it is post that? Now, having said this 4 years training period, 4 years service period, there is 6 months, that is 6 weeks earmarked for recruitment training, the basic training which they will do in the training recruitment centers. And then they will come to the units. That means actually they'll be available to their Pultons, to their battalions for a period of 3.5 years. And in that period, they're entitled to 30 days annual leave. So, the actual period which they will be available would really come down to about 33 to 34 months in service. So this is one aspect. So I've told you the major reforms or the major intake which is going to take place in respect of the Agnipath, the Agniveers who are going to come. We will, as we go along, I think we can have certain more issues, they'll be thrown up and we can discuss that. I leave it at it and someone else can take on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for expressing such great views. Now, I would like to ask Major Rakesh Sharma, sir, to say something about this.
Well, Jessica, my humble request is that we'll take rather this to General Kochhar, sir, because he's been a veteran on this and he's been, discussing this threadbare across the forums on electronic media, on so many other forums. So he is the best person to probably throw some really elaborate highlight on this particular. So thereafter, probably I'll have something to say. So, Kochhar, sir, I would rather request you to kindly take this on.
Okay, Rakesh, as you said, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I think Rakesh is very particular about the protocol. So I compliment him for understanding the thing. Okay, I'll take on from where General S.V. Singh has left. It's important to understand the outset. I've been a very fierce critic of this scheme. As long as this scheme was not implemented, it was announced, but it was not implemented at that point of time. One thing has been taught to me in the army, to express your point of view before a decision or implementation is to be taken. Thereafter, whatever the decision, you must support that and see how best the implementation can take. Because right now, we are all aware the weaknesses of the scheme. We are all aware why it was brought upon and why it has been thrust upon and why the government wanted to implement it. It is there in a public domain. I don't have to repeat those things. I don't have to say anything about it. I will focus on what is going to happen now. How this scheme should unfold. What are the areas where we need to focus as far as the Indian Armed Forces is concerned? And what kind of message has to be sent to the youth of the country? These are the issues I would right now like to focus on. So starting with the implementation, the recruitment process has already commenced. The Air Force and the Navy selection lists are already out. And the Army, in all the regimental centers, the Army has received the number of vacancies which each regimental center will have to recruit. For example, in in my own organization, the Army Ordnance Corps, our center has already received the numbers we are required to recruit. So the process has commenced. The important areas which the Army will need to focus on is to ensure a comprehensive training of these recruits in a period of 6 months. To ensure the redundancy of the earlier recruitment program is taken out of the system, and only those essential parts of training which a soldier, a future soldier, a future ready soldier, as we actually call it, because technology is coming up in a big way in the Indian Army and the Air Force and the Navy. So the first aspect is the training curriculum has to be built up in a manner which should support a proper training of the Jawan in a period of 6 months. Now the second most important aspect is that what happens when he goes to his Paltan, his regiment. How does the commanding officer now tackle this issue that 75% of these boys are no longer going to be a part of the system after 4 years? For example, I was talking to a commanding officer of the Special Forces. Special Forces are those forces, para-commandos, the one who went on a surgical strike. Now, the requirement of Special Forces is very peculiar. They cannot invest in a soldier who will not be available to them after 4 years. So what happens to the Special Forces? Do this recruitment pattern of 25-75 becomes applicable to them? So that is the question which the Indian Army will have to answer, because a Special Forces will not take a Jawan who is going to leave after 4 years. So what happens if the system is in black and white? The third important aspect which I am given to understand is the commanding officers will have no role to play in the retention of these boys, which is quite surprising. I was taken aback when I was told by the commanding officer, sir, the powers are not with us. Retention is going to be done at a very high level. The Jawan who is training with the Paltan, the commanding officer, the Subedar Major, the 2IC, the company commanders, the platoon commanders actually know these boys more than anybody else. And they don't have any stake in their retention. So this aspect, I would like to appeal through your channel. It should reach the higher echelons that it should not be done in this manner. The commanding officer has to be given, say, 75% weightage. 25, it can be kept with the higher ups. But the majority of the weightage for retention has to be with the commanding officer. So this is the second part I would like to recommend in your program. And the third part, or the last part, is that there is, we have the Gurkha regiments with us. The Gurkha soldiers come from Nepal. I was reading in the papers that they are now contemplating that why should we send our soldiers for 4 years? So this is also a question which will need to be addressed by the policy makers of the scheme. Now my last part is for the youth of the country. You know, I have a lot of my Jawans who have served with me, Subedars and Havaldars, who keep on telling me that साहब आप टीवी चैनल्स में जाते हैं और आप हमारी जो आवाज है वो देश को बताइए कि गांव से जब एक लड़का निकलता है फौज की वर्दी अपना पहन कर, क्या वो 4 साल बाद वापस आ सकता है वर्दी के बिना? क्या ये गांव के लिए एक्सेप्टेबल होगा? और हमारी इतनी ट्रेडिशंस है, हमारे परमवीर चक्र है इस गांव में, महावीर चक्र है, तो हम अपने बच्चों को कैसे समझाएंगे कि अभी आप फौज में ज्वाइन करो? Unfortunately, the level of unemployment of this country is very high. So these figures, what you are seeing and which government is claiming, is so many people have applied because last 2.5 years there was no recruitment. So there is a backlog. So this backlog has to be made up, and the vacancies are available, and the people are without jobs. Unemployment is there in the country. So anybody would like to get employed, even if it is for 4 years. So that is one point I would like to make here. I would, to your program, recommend that as we go along in this scheme should have a review after 2 years and not after 4 years. After 2 years, you should review this scheme and possibly think of making it for 5 years and retention of 50%, because that is the minimum requirement which the armed forces want. And as a matter of fact, when the recommendations of the army had gone to the government, it was 5 years and 50%. It was the government which toned it down to 4 years and 25%. So I would recommend, because the Indian Army and the Air Force and the Navy are the stakeholders, their opinion should be honored. Whatever recommendation they have given should have been accepted. So that is all I have to say in my opening remarks. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Jessica,
And now I request.
Jessica, before we move on, Major General Kochhar, may I ask you a
Yes, yes.
question? I've been
Please, ma'am.
fascinated and have been listening very attentively to your opening statements. Now, you said that 25% of the Agniveers who are going to be who have been employed will be retained, and 75. So, if the commanding officer does not have the power to decide, or it is not within his domain, then who does it? The government
See, it
on
has.
its own will not do it.
You see, the level has been actually gone up to a general officer commanding of a major general's rank. So, see, the Paltons, a GOC of a division, he has 3 infantry brigades with him, and today in LC environment up to 5 infantry brigades. Each infantry brigade has got 3 infantry battalions. 15 infantry battalions. How sitting such far away, he can make such judgments? So, my point of opinion here is that the person who's on the ground, the person who's next to the troops, who is 24/7, he is living with the troops, he is the best person to judge. That is what I have to say.
There is one request. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. Actually, this meeting is about to end, so I request all of you to join the second meeting. The link is given in the description box, in the chat box. So I request you all to join that meeting, because this meeting will end soon.